I've had this inspiration in me for a while that I want to normalize the fact that we actually are divine beings, sovereign divine beings, and that we should not hide it anymore. And I've had some conversations with some people about it. And there seems to be a tendency um, to go to the dark side, or to go to the shadow part that is not fully in the light yet. And somehow most of us get stuck there, and we keep working on it and we keep improving it, but we never really get to the point where we actually can own the fact and say, yeah, I am divine. I am light. The word God is kind of a funny word, isn't it? Because there's so many, it has so many, so much history and negativity and positivity to it. But just to say, I am God, just think about what will that invoke in people. It's like, well, who do you think you are? Come on, there's only one who is God, and that is, and then the name of that person. But is it really true? And is it time for us to at least start owning it, even if it's secretly or with a trusted friend who is not going to shame you for it or something, and give our attention to what we really are. Now, when we identify with the shadow part, of course, that's just a veil that is covering it. But it is not who we are. It's that separate sense of self that claims to be who we are, and it will fight for it and will convince us and will prove it, right? We've all been there, and most of us still are at times. But there's something interesting I've been noticing when I talk to people about that it's the conversation often opens up with the beauty of that, and then the shadow piece comes in. I was like, yeah, but I can't really own it because I have this and I haven't healed that yet, and I still have these thoughts and I still believe that, and still get stuck in this. And then all the energy goes there, and the light is being dimmed again. And here we go. So, are we ever going to make it out of this darkness, of this lie, of this veil? Is it possible? I'm just putting out the question right now. If I answer that for myself, I say yes, it is possible for me. I do not know if it's possible for you or you or you or the whole world. But I know it's possible for me because I know who I am. And just because I get pulled away from that knowing, from that being it, and get pulled into some of the world beliefs that most people believe in, I'm not good enough, and who cares anyway, and I haven't healed this part yet, and I still have these emotions. Fine, have them, be them, but don't identify with them. Don't give your life to them, because when you do that, then you are not going to get out of it. So there's this, there's a sword. Like, is it possible to really say no? And I did a video around that a while ago called Don't Touch It. Don't touch it. And that is really, really hard because we are swimming in it and we're touching it all the time, and everybody else is touching it. So that if I should stand up and say, no, I am not that, I'm done with it, then just like actually Jonathan Livingston Seagull, you remember that beautiful story by, what's his name, Richard Bach, I think. Jonathan was able to rise above and then keep looking at the whole vista and see what was actually true, and that Jonathan is or was that. And what happened to all the seagulls? They were trying to put him down. They're like, oh, come on, you should be down here with us, suffering and blah, blah, blah. It's the same with us. So if you see somebody rising out of the muck, do you celebrate them? Do you feel jealous? Do you secretly judge them or put them down? Or are you able to say, wow, if you can do it, I can do it? And that's really what has inspired me to do this YouTube channel, is to help. It's kind of like I want to start a movement and make it normal, make it real, that we can be the light, the divinity that we actually really are, and still having some of the old shadow parts be there, but not identify with them and not get lost in them, but just notice them and learn to be present with them, not touch them and get lost and sucked in, but to be present with them from this space of presence that you are, that I am. If I can touch these parts with that, then I create that same presence around it. And it's kind of an expansion of space, so that the contraction of the shadow, where it's dark, there's no light in it, right? By creating space, by allowing, there is an openness, and in that light can come in, and it does dissolve the darkness. We know that, right? If you open the room to a dark room and you let the light in, there is no more darkness. And it is a great metaphor, but how can we apply that to ourselves so it actually becomes real? So just like the room suddenly is light, how can we suddenly be light, and not keep turning to, if there's one little corner in the room that's still dark because there's a spider web or whatever, and say, no, I'm not light, I'm that darkness down there, and I need to clean it up, and I need to work on it, and I need to find out who my spider family was, who the ancestors were. Whatever we do, instead of just letting the light embrace that darkness by allowing it, by not resisting it, by being present with it in a kind way, in a loving way, in a light way, because at the core, we are light. That's our essence. We are love. That is our essence. And that love, that light, that essence, it just knows how to be what it is. It does not know anything about excluding anyone or anything. That does not exist, right? When the light comes into the dark room, it doesn't go like, oh, no, I'm not going to shine my light on you. The light has no clue what darkness is, because it doesn't exist there. It's something we have made up in our minds, or not, maybe not made up, but accepted as a suggestion. And the more we do that, the more we will experience of it. So, hey, how about taking a stand? Take a stand for light, for love, for God, that you are that. What would it take? What would it take? And again, I always try and reflect it back here so I can share what it has taken for me. It's taking a ton of willingness to do whatever it takes to not touch or engage in that shadow part anymore. Not bypassing, it's very different. Bypassing is ignoring it and it's going to stay there forever. Allowing it is helping it to open up. And as it opens up, you learn to be present with every single layer as it shows up. So if you're present with this spider web, there might be all these little spiders behind it. So it is true when I really am present with something, there's often the next layer and the next, and then something shows up in my life, that also could pull my attention away. So it's getting that sword really, really sharp so that whatever comes your way, you could just say, that is very powerful and it feels incredibly empowering. It feels like, you become invincible and you choose what you want instead of what you don't want. You put your energy, your attention, your consciousness where you want it. And you start choosing to not put it where you don't want it. At the core, it is that simple. At the outer edges, it's really challenging. That's where a lot of the work needs to happen, where we just allow whatever shows up and presents itself as true about us. In the beginning, we need to be present with it in a loving and kind way because there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of tight holding that does not know how to let go. It's impossible. But when you put a loving hand under this contraction, then it can go, oh, oh, oh. You see, because it's not alone, it's being held in a loving energy. And then it can relax a little bit. These are the parts in all of us that we have been so identified with. And then little by little, as it opens up, then there's going to be probably a story, a memory, trauma in here that just needs to be witnessed in a very loving way. It needs to be met in a very loving way. And as we do that, this love that we bring, it just starts flashing it out gently, gently. And it might tighten up again later, but then we just do it again. These are very deeply ingrained neural pathways that we have lived with and inherited and accepted and believed. So it takes time, and all the whole world is also affected, of course, by these same suggestions. So even though you may clear it out in yourself to a certain degree, you will most likely keep meeting it out in the world as a suggestion. It's like, hey, come back in, we want you in here. You can't just take off and be love or be light or be free. That's when you have to have your sword out and you say, no, I don't touch you. Whoop. Very powerful. Takes a lot of willingness. And I tell you, it is worth every single step. And you do not need to be perfect before you can do it. It doesn't work that way. It works in a way that as you are doing this, saying no to it, choosing, that is how you dissolve more and more of the shadow by taking the steps, not by pulling away and getting lost and fixing it. It's like, no, I don't want that anymore. I want this. And then you just Take every single step. And at a certain point, it's going to be much easier to meet those shadow parts, if we can use that name, because you have embraced enough of your light. And the light makes it easier because the light will lighten your burden, it will dissolve the darkness. And every time you do that, you have more access to your light. So you grow in your capacity of being what you already are. And the more you grow, the more light you have, the easier it is to dissolve the shadows. Although there's times when they can come back pretty big and furious, but that's just basically saying that you are able to meet that now because you have grown also bigger and more furious in your light. So you're able to meet that darkness in a new way. So if this speaks to you, and I sure hope it does, I want to just say that my intention at some point is to create a movement of beings who are willing to start owning their light, their divinity, their sovereignty as a divine being. And if this speaks to you, I hope you will join me.